Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of The Numbers. I'm Eric Grenier with Philippe J. Fournier, and we are going to go over the numbers in full. But first, Philippe, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Eric. Thanks for asking. Again, I think I said that last week, but it's even truer this week. End of semester for my college. My marking is all done. All we have left is boring meetings and parties. So I'll take it. I feel pretty good, and also we're just before the end of parliamentary session rush of polls. We will have a flurry of polls in early June before the break, and so this is always a good but busy time to be following the numbers. So how are you, Eric? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing okay. It's a beautiful day here in Ottawa, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So why don't we delve right into the federal polling numbers? Over the last week, since our last episode, there's been 3 national polls that have been published. So we had one from Léger, which was the most recent, just came out yesterday on Wednesday. Had 42% for the Conservatives, 23% for the Liberals, 18% for the New Democrats. There were some interesting Quebec numbers. We'll get into that. There was another poll by Ipsos for Global News at 44% for the Conservatives, 25% for the Liberals, 16% for the NDP. And as usual, the Nanos poll that comes out every week, the update to the 4-week rolling poll, 42% for the Conservatives, 26% for the Liberals, 19% for the NDP. One thing to discuss, I would like to get into.
Oh, okay.
Do any of these numbers, because we saw some discussion of it from the Abacus poll, I think might have kicked off that conversation last week. We talked a little bit about that poll last week, but do you see any indication of any sort of trend that a Liberal could be happy about?
No.
All
Next
right.
question.
We'll move on to...
No, but seriously, though, we have to remember, okay? So when we talk about a gap between the top 2 parties, a gap is not one measure, it's 2 measures. And so when we say, the gap went from 20 to 16%, well, the thing is, if both parties move by 2 points, it goes from 20 to 16, yet all the numbers are within the margin of error. So to see real movement, like the Liberals wanted, they said they wanted to close the gap by 5 points. They want to close the gap by 5 points, not in one poll, in the average of polls. And so far, we don't see that. The Nanos research had the Liberals at 26, Abacus at 25. And for most of April, we saw the Liberals more between 22 and 24. So you could say that's a slight improvement, but then Léger yesterday just burst that narrative wide open with 23%, including poor numbers in Ontario, only 24% in Ontario for the Liberals. So don't call it a trend until you see at least one full round of posters, the Ipsos, the Légers, the Abacus, the English Street Institute, until you see one full round where they all agree. And that is not the case right now.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think we're seeing a trend. I think we're seeing something that could be something to watch a little bit.
Something that could be something? Like what?
Something that could be something, yeah. Because, you had 42 for the Conservatives in Nanos, in Léger. Léger had them down a couple of points. Abacus had them to 41. Ipsos had them up to 44, which goes against the narrative there.
But it was an older poll, though. Ipsos
yeah,
was
a little bit of an older poll. So is there a bit of a softening of the Conservative support where instead of being at 44, they're down to 42 or 41? If you're a Conservative, you can still be pretty happy with 42 or 41. And then, as you said, the Liberals, we tended to see more often than 23, 24, is the fact that we had a 25 in Ipsos, 25 in Abacus, 26 in Nanos. Are they rebounding a point or two? Maybe. Yeah. But again, we kind of need to see another set of... You need kind of like 3 polls from each pollster, right? To see if it's a continuing thing or if it's just back and forth and back and forth. But I think this is more of a statement, a testament to the poor situation the Liberals find themselves in.
Oh, yeah.
That the fact that they were up to 25 or 26 and that the gap was maybe 16 points, 18 points rather than 22 or 21.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very much to be very excited about.
And especially if you look at the regionals, because there's no good news in there. I mean, look at the Léger poll. I have the numbers in front of me. I wrote about this on social media yesterday. Trailing badly in Ontario. Statistical tie in Quebec with the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois. Trailing badly in Atlantic Canada. Okay, small subsample. Trailing among men, which is not new, but trailing by 14 points among women, that is pretty bad. And also trailing in every age group. There's no bad news. There's no subsample somewhere that you can hang your hat on. There's no good news at all for the Liberals. And so, again, if you want to cherry pick your polls, and we know that partisans and sometimes politicians do that, but we don't. We
don't say that. Don't say that, Philippe.
I know I'm the cynical one, I guess, but
so sad.
There's no movement. And also, when I updated the federal projection last Sunday, some people says, "Oh, the Conservatives are at 211. Whoa, they're slipping. It's like 2 weeks ago they were at 220." Like, no. It's a 9-seat difference. It fluctuates. The uncertainty is about 30 seats. So think about a fluctuation that is 1/3 the value of the uncertainty. It's not statistically significant. So no good news in there. And we're entering soon summer. We're still in late spring. We're entering soon summer. Still no good news. We will have to repeat, will Trudeau stay or will Trudeau go at some point again? I mean, we've been through this last fall and this winter and this spring. It's going to come up again, especially after the St. Paul's election, by-election on June 24th. But
no good news for the Liberals here. Not really enough either, I think, for Justin Trudeau to look at and cling to as a sign that maybe things are getting all that much better. We've seen lots of polling on sort of the leadership question in recent weeks. We used to say that Trudeau was an asset for the Liberals. I don't think that's the case anymore.
No,
we can discuss till the cows come home and all that, whether a replacement would end up doing better or worse. And I think that we don't know that. I think that's the most we can say.
Yeah.
But in the past, if you had asked me like last summer, last fall, I would have said that in all likelihood, Trudeau would do better than most replacements. I think at this stage, a replacement just gives the Liberals some sort of ability to have some renewal, some ability to change the conversation about what the election is going to be about, because nothing that we see suggests that things are getting that much better for the Liberals, or that Trudeau is going to be in a position to take them there. I think that's one of the biggest issues with a lot of these numbers for the Liberals, is that if they get up to 27, 28%, fine, maybe you won't have a disastrous showing. Maybe you'll win 70 or 80 seats instead of 40 or 50 or 60. But you look at the numbers on the leadership question, it's just hard to see how Trudeau would be able to get them up to the 32 or 33 they would need to have a shot at another minority government. So I don't know. It's feeling like the smart move would be for Justin Trudeau to step aside at some point to give his party a chance. Yeah. And it just comes down to whether he wants to do it at this point, because I don't think there's much of an argument anymore that he shouldn't. For the sake of the Liberal Party.
Or for his legacy. I mean, I know some people really dislike Justin Trudeau, but whether you like it or not, he has a legacy. He will have been there for a decade. And, I mean, Brian Mulroney had a legacy, and we discussed it at length. I think we had a national conversation because he died and for his funeral. But there was always that stain of huge defeat. He left before the defeat occurred, but we all know it was him. It was not Kim Kemba's fault that the BC's completely tanked in '93.
Léger, she didn't help, but yeah.
No, it didn't help, but yeah, okay. Leader who will make the best prime minister. So this includes the none of the above, the I don't know, I prefer not to answer. Justin Trudeau has 16%. Poilievre has 28%. Jagmeet Singh has 16%. So Jagmeet Singh, who nobody takes seriously to be a future prime minister, it is tied with Justin Trudeau. they're done. They're
Yeah.
done. I mean, there's no turnaround here. It's been too long for a turnaround. It's not a fluke. We're closing in on one full calendar year of numbers like this. So I'm not sure what to add, but it's fascinating because it would be interesting. I mean, after the debate, not the debate, sorry, the budget, had the Liberals gone up to 27, 28 in the aggregate, there was a story to be told. Right? There was, okay, a little bump. Yeah, that's not happening because they're not listening. Canadians are not listening to the Liberals anymore. And so they have to brace for impact. So...
And maybe we have to brace for a leadership race in the fall. Who knows?
Oh, well, that would be fun, though. I mean, regardless... I mean,
the fall is going to be pretty slow, I think. 3 provincial elections, a U.S. presidential election. Why not have a choice of a new prime minister?
Maybe a few snap elections.
Maybe. We'll see.
You want to get to the provinces? Because I think we have some interesting there. I mean, the federal stuff is always great, but not... I mean... There's no change, so we'll see.
No news, but we do have news in Newfoundland and Labrador. There was a by-election in Baie Verte-Green Bay. That is how it's pronounced. I found it. It's pronounced Baie Verte. Baie Verte. You gotta get on board. People pronounce things the way they pronounce things there, Philippe. Anyway, there was a by-election in Baie Verte-Green Bay, which was a close race in the last provincial election in 2020 where the Liberals won it by just a few points over the PCs.
Yeah.
This wasn't close.
No.
This was not close. Lynn Paddock of the PCs won 79% of the vote.
Amazing.
79% of the vote. Up 31 points. The Liberals, who candidate Owen Burt says that he supports Pierre Poilievre, took 19% of the vote. Down 33 points. The NDP, who hadn't run a candidate for the last couple elections, took 2%. 79%, a 60-point swing, 60-point margin of victory. Yeah, when Newfoundland and Labrador swings, it swings.
Oh, yeah.
Hard.
I mean, from the first ballot box to the last, it was never close, right? There wasn't a tightening in the middle, and then no, it was 75 to 80% of the votes all the way through.
Turnout went up.
Turnout went up in a by-election. By-elections turnout. We know it's very localized stuff, but still, the fact that it went up, bad news. I mean, here's what I'll say about this. Aside from people telling us endlessly, well, that's not what we hear in the field. There was no data available that showed us this swing was coming.
There's no data available at all. We haven't had a poll out of Newfoundland and Labrador since February, I don't think.
Exactly. But even that little piece of data from narrative research did not point towards... I mean, PC's winning, sure. They had lost by a handful of points, as you said. But PC's getting close to 80% of the vote. No one saw that coming. No one outside, of course, saw that coming. And this marked the end for me of writing projections in Newfoundland and Labrador. And a lot of people took screenshots of the projection that I had, which followed the polls. And I understand why they do that, because they want to discredit my work for other places. I don't care. They can do whatever they want. I know why it doesn't work. For those, people criticize me like, why? Like, are you? Sorry for the language, but chicken shit. Like, are you not gonna post? No, I'm a scientist. I do this because it mostly works, because we have data that is sound. That aside from some hyper-local effects, that you will always have exceptions. The data works. I won't do the writing projections for Newfoundland for the same reason that I don't do writing projections for PEI, because we do not have data for that is worth something. And so I'm gonna take like a broad provincial projection, right? So that's rather easy to do. But seat by seat with margins, we don't have the data to do it. It becomes astrology, and I don't want to do that. So,
The swings that we see in Atlantic Canada, particularly in places like PEI and Newfoundland and Labrador, they are hyper local. There's for a poll to have a province-wide poll to have suggested that the PCs would benefit from a 60-point swing would require more or less the province-wide polling to have about 60% for the PCs and 15% for the Liberals, something like that.
Yeah.
Not going to happen, right? There's local dynamics in races like this. We saw it in the by-election in Fogo Island, Cape Friels last month. Another big swing towards the PCs. There's a number of factors leading to this. One being there's a lot of discontent with the Liberal government, especially over the fisheries in Newfoundland and Labrador. These are areas in the north of central Newfoundland, so these are outports. These are places with big fisher communities. So there was that aspect. There's the unpopularity of the Trudeau government. The Newfoundland PCs are running against Justin Trudeau. They called them the Fury Trudeau Liberals. They're talking about axe this and this tax. They're following the lead of Pierre Poilievre. There's these elements that are kind of combining to make this huge swing possible. The one thing that's kind of interesting to see how it's going to go is that so these two by-elections took place, as I said, took place in the outports, sort of the rural and remote Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah.
The Liberals won a by-election in Conception Bay East, Belle Island, earlier this year. This is closer. This is sort of like a suburb for St. John's. And there's going to be another by-election in Watford Valley later this year because Tom Osborne, the long-serving minister there, has resigned. That's in the St. John's area. If the Liberals lose that seat, we see the same kind of swing. Then we know it's lights out for Andrew Furey versus a rural versus urban kind of dynamic that might be playing out in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we'll get more information about it as time goes on, but it's tough to be a Liberal right now.
It would be great to have more polling in there, and there are people in our Discords that mention this, not especially for Newfoundland, but why don't we get more polling out of Saskatchewan and New Brunswick? There are elections this fall, and don't forget, it always comes down to money, to cost. Like if you do a poll, it's going to cost you several $1,000s, and how are you going to finance that? To put that in the media, in the national media, it won't get clicks, it won't get views, and in Newfoundland it will, but it won't pay for itself. So, but I would have loved to see right now, like a 1,000 sample voting intentions for Newfoundlands to see if this really was like a local race, something that went really wrong for the Liberals, or that. Yeah, maybe it's the end of the Liberal run in Newfoundland and Labrador for quite a while. So, but we don't have the data, and so yeah, I feel bad for Newfoundlanders. I receive emails. They said that they like, even though there was a big miss. I always say, well, it's a big miss for by-election, but that argument that the model is not made for by-election, I think it's valid. It's just that the turnout went up. The turnout went up, so clearly it was more than that. But without data, we're flying blind. So when is the election? It's supposed. It was in the. It was
supposed
in the
to be
spring of
November
21.
2025.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so
the last one was in. Yes, sorry, I said
Spring
2020.
21.
It was in 2021, early 2021.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be November 2025. I don't know what's going to happen there because there had been talk that there could be an early election after they'd won that by-election in Conception Bay East, but now I don't think so. But nevertheless, I don't know.
Wow.
Do you want to go after a federal campaign where your partners got shellacked? Maybe that's not a bad thing, because if you can say we're no longer the Fury Trudeau Liberals because Trudeau's gone, I don't know. Maybe that gives them an option. But
maybe.
Yeah, something to watch. Okay, let's go to the other side of the country, British Columbia. We do have some new numbers there. We also have some news.
Yes.
That came out just after we recorded last week, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. The BC United put out a statement saying that they had ended, or at least the Conservatives had ended, negotiations over some sort of cooperation between BCU and the BC Conservatives.
Yeah.
Uniquely, the BC United put out the details of what their terms were. So, it wasn't going to be a merger, would have been cooperation.
Yeah.
Not run against each other, not attack each other. Split up the province into 47 candidates for the BC Conservatives, 46 for BCU because they have more incumbents. there are 15 incumbents. BCU would be protected, not run against by Conservative candidates. The Conservatives would get 2, because they only have 2 incumbents. They do a draft, which sounds fun, of the seats that they would each do. And then afterwards, whoever won the most seats, assuming they beat the NDP, would get to become the premier, and the other party leader would become the deputy premier, and they'd portion out the cabinet seats according to how many seats each party won.
Yeah.
And the Conservatives more or less said, stuff it, we don't want to do that. And kind of feel like they were right to do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what would you have done being if you were the Conservatives in that situation and read that document? You would have said, like, really? That the time to do that was last fall. It's way too late now. And I mean, I love the draft idea.
Yeah, that's fun.
I mean, you should have put that on TV live and have those. Okay, I'm gonna ask a timeout. So, okay, the BCU is on the clock. Oh, do we take a Abbotsford or so
on the BC interior? The Conservatives draft.
Yeah. Peace River. So, listen. Why would the Conservatives give anything to the Uniteds? Their goal is to get rid of them and to become a 2-party province or 2.5-party province. The Uniteds are just in the way, right? And with the polling that we see, even this morning's poll from the Angus Street Institute, which you alluded to a few seconds ago, I mean, it's not a great poll for the Conservatives. It's basically the same general numbers as ResearchCo had last week. So 41%, 41% for the NDP. I said they say on my sheet 30%. I thought it was 31 for the Conservatives. But yeah, so low 30s for the Conservatives, 16 for the Uniteds, and 11 for the Greens. This would be an NDP win, no question. But the Uniteds would be lucky to have a handful of seats in that scenario. And you're right, it was 30% for the Conservatives. I had mistyped, so I'm going to change that.
What I found interesting is the idea that BCU was being generous by offering them 47 candidates to 46.
Come on.
Because they had their 15 incumbents. 15 of those incumbents, I think maybe 14 or 15 won't be MLAs after the election.
Yeah.
And the Conservatives would probably have won or are in a good position right now to win maybe 12, 13 of those.
Yeah.
2 of the seats that are the incumbents that would have been quote unquote protected are the 2 Peace River seats. And those are the 2 seats where the Conservatives took 30-something% of the vote last time.
Yeah.
It's almost a guarantee that they're going to win those seats. They have candidates already in place. Why would they have agreed to ask their candidates to step aside, let the incumbents that were doomed to defeat get to run unopposed by them? There's no chance of an NDP vote split electing it, or a center-right vote split electing a New Democrat in Peace River. It was just the deal made no sense from the perspective of the Conservatives.
To the point of being laughable. Like it doesn't seem serious. But again, if you travel back in time, take this deal and travel back to last September. Yeah, there's
when
some
apparently the Conservatives were the ones coming asking, "Hey, should we talk deal?"
There are tweaks to be made to this deal, but I think there could have been an arrangement, but it's way too late. So, man, I would love to negotiate any deal right now with whoever was negotiated the BC Uniteds, because they don't seem like great negotiators, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see if they'll get some more polling. The polling from the Angus Street Institute, I said, like the 11-point lead for the NDP.
Yeah.
I was actually really kind of surprised to see it when we saw the ResearchCo poll that had, I think it was a 10-point lead or something.
Yeah, it was 10. That's right.
That seemed like on the low end for the Conservatives based on everything else we've seen. But now we have another one showing that the Conservatives are closer to that 30% than the 40%. So we're still getting the online versus IVR kind of debate here. But it's still going to be a race when you look at it regionally. You know, the Conservatives performing well in places like Surrey and the Fraser Valley. But we'll see if more of these polls are going to come out that have the Conservatives further back from the NDP than some of the other surveys. Because if the NDP is 10 points up, then they're going to be fine in terms of being reelected. And the BCU still going to struggle to survive after this election, I think.
You just mentioned the difference between IVRs and the online polls, which we discussed at length in recent podcasts, but we still should mention the previous Angus Reid poll had 43 for the NDP, now it's 41, so no variation. But the Angus Reid had 22 for both the Uniteds and the Conservatives, so a hike of 8 points for the Conservatives. That's way beyond the margin of error. So the movement, even though the numbers are not the same across the board, the trends are the same from all pollsters. So interesting. It's going to be, I think we said that last week and the week before, it's going to be an interesting campaign in BC. Thing is, John Rustad, whatever you think of him, has not really been tested. So he will be in a campaign. He will be part of the leaders' debate. He will be questioned every day. And of course, his past and his comments about climate change, the reason he was booted out of the formerly known as Liberals, this is going to resurface in a campaign. And it's going to be a challenge for him to not look like a fool. Perhaps...
He still is, though, a kind of an unknown. One of the interesting things that they asked in this was they showed an image of the leader, and they said, which party does this leader lead? 70% of people correctly assigned David Eby to the NDP. Just under 60%, which is actually, I'm surprised it's as high as that, assigned Kevin Falcon to BC United and Sonia Furstenau to the Greens. But only 46% did Rustad and the Conservatives. Half of British Columbians weren't really sure when they saw the photo. They didn't know which party he led. So the campaign will be an introduction for a lot of British Columbians to John Rustad, and that's a risk. We know that they don't like Kevin Falcon either. So maybe if you don't like the alternative, you're stuck with the choice you're heading into the campaign with. But there's still lots of unknowns here, and I don't feel that a lot of the unknowns are positive unknowns for the Conservatives. There's more risks. I feel
That's
like
true.
They got more a downside than upside based on the kind of numbers we see.
To end on this, just to be fair though, I mean, if the Conservatives lose the election, but they become the official opposition and they eradicate the Uniteds, going from 1.9% of the vote to this would still be a win. I mean, if you're a BC Conservative right now, you should have a multi-election plan, maybe a 2-election plan. And so finishing at 30% of the vote and being the official opposition would be a win. So they should be careful where they set the bar. They should set the bar quite low, even though, of course, they all want to win. But not winning, but getting close could be a good stepping stone for next time. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's move to Ontario, where we might be going to a campaign sooner than we expected. Doug Ford not ruling out an early election call, saying he wants to enact his agenda. He did, though, yesterday rule out 100% that there wouldn't be an election this summer this fall.
Yeah.
So at least we won't have a overly busy fall. But that still kind of sounds like he's thinking about next spring.
I mean, if you're going to rule out, don't rule out what is already obvious. We knew there wasn't going to be an election this fall or this summer. The question, I'm thinking May or June of next year, just before the break, just before we get into the federal election, if the federal election really is on October 27th of 25. There was an article by Mike Crawley, so he's the CBC guy at Queen's Park. Somebody whose writing I really enjoy. He seems to be really well connected. But for this piece, about the potential of an early call, he quoted, what's his name? Monsieur Delory, Fred Delory, right? A longtime conservative organizer. And he said, if they're calling the election early simply because the polls are good for them, then that's a strategic mistake. Voters could get angry at that and punish the government for calling it an early election, which I think we all have the federal campaign of 21 in mind. Like the Liberals are leading, they're projecting to have a majority, and they call an election on August 15th, 2021, and right away their numbers start to tank. Erin O'Toole takes the lead around Labor Day, then the debates happen, and Justin Trudeau wins again. It's just that I'm going to ask you, because you're the historian among us, is there a precedent recently of a conservative government getting punished for calling a snap election? Because I can't think of one. I mean, that the fact calling a snap election and being punished for it is something that progressive voters do. I don't remember conservatives fall in line when it's time to vote. I don't think Doug Ford, if he thinks he can win a majority, would be punished by the electorate. Who, the turnout is going to go down to 35%? So, I don't know. Can you think of one? Because I can't. So.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, because I was thinking, well, there's David Peterson in 1990 called the early election in Ontario, and that went badly, but he was a Liberal, and the NDP won.
Paul Marois, Parti Québécois, but not conservative.
Yeah. Because Brian Pallister went a year early in Manitoba in 2019, didn't seem to hurt.
Nope.
Dennis King went a few months early in PI last year, didn't hurt at all. But what would be the reason for that? Why would it not impact Conservative support, but it would impact Liberal or NDP support?
Because they're not graded on the same scale. They're not graded on the same scales. I mean, I know it's a very broad statement, but I think when Liberal or left of center or parties, they hold their leaders to a higher standard than just winning. They want to see why you're doing this. I do not think that progressive conservatives, PC voters in Ontario, would be mad at Doug Ford if he goes, listen, we could win a majority if we go early.
We could beat those Liberals and Dippers again.
They're all. I mean, you're watching the NHL playoffs every other day. I see. Well, Bonnie Crombie, of course, she's friends with Justin Trudeau. They already run ads. So, do you think for 1 second that PC voters would punish Doug Ford? They wouldn't. Of course, they wouldn't. But I mean, this is my impression. It's just I'm trying to think of a precedent of a conservative.
Theory.
I don't see it.
Interesting theory. Jim Prentice, maybe? In 2015?
His campaign was terrible, though. But yeah.
Right.
That would be... that would be an example, but that campaign was terrible.
Call an early election and run an awful campaign. Not a good combination.
And half your party goes to a party further to the right. It's not that they sat this one out. But yeah, okay, that would be one. Yeah.
Okay. And then, Interesting thought. It feels to me like they will now go in the spring, try to avoid the two things that they're saying they're trying to avoid. One is the historical precedent that generally, and it actually stands up if you look at the numbers. Voters in Ontario have they prefer to have different governments in Queen's Park and in the House of Commons. And then the other one is that the Ford PCs are worried what Poilievre will do, whether he'll cut transfers to the provinces and stuff like that, and whether they'll wear some of the bad, unpopular decisions that Poilievre might make in his first months in office. So it's an interesting calculation. A lot of Conservatives, I think, across the country would like to have elections before Justin Trudeau either resigns or is defeated in 2025, right? Because we were just talking about Newfoundland and Labrador, talking about BC. I think they would prefer, if they could, to run against Justin Trudeau as a proxy. So the clock is going to start ticking, I think, on that. So it's interesting that we're seeing this already being discussed. And the fact that it's being discussed maybe a year before a call, people are going to be kind of used to it.
Yeah. But it's still amazing.
If Ontarians are paying attention, of course.
If they're... But it's still amazing. We are in late May. We're not even at halfway point of this mandate, and already snap election calls are discussed. This would really hurt any progressive government in this country. I don't think it hurts conservative governments. I really don't. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, cut the clip, put it in my face. We'll see. I'll live with it. So
let's get to the questions. So we are going to answer one of our questions from our Patreon members, and then for our Patreon members, we're going to answer more questions, but that portion of the episode will be only for our Patreon members. So if you want to become a member of the Patreon, get to ask us the questions, get early access to the episodes on Thursdays, get the extra episodes every second week, and get the extended mailbag, you can go to thenumberspod.ca and support the work we're doing. Okay, so Andy on the Discord. Kind of a three-part question. He says, what could the results of the upcoming by-elections mean for each of the federal parties? So we have Toronto St. Paul's, June 24th. So his question there is, could Trudeau still hold on to party leadership if the Liberals lose? We have LaSalle Aimard Verdun, which is going to be called sometime over the summer. He says, can pigs fly? Can a party besides the Liberals win this? And then Elmwood Transcona in Winnipeg, which has to be called by the end of September. And he says this seems like the first solid litmus test as to whether Poilievre's blue-collar union worker message can pick up seats with the NDP being the only party with a fair bit to lose. Go.
Okay. I'll start with LaSalle Aimard Verdun. Can the Liberals lose this? It's just that the Liberals in this riding, in contrast with Toronto St. Paul's, the vote will be split. So last time around in 21, the Bloc Québécois and the NDP had both around 20% of the vote, and there's no indication that those numbers have moved much, especially in that part of Montreal. Maybe the Bloc will be a bit higher, maybe the NDP will be a bit higher or lower, but if they get 20-ish% each, the Liberals could win with 35. And they won with, I believe it was 41 last time. So I think LaSalle Aimard Verdun is the safest of those three. This time for the Liberals. Do you want me to go through all, or you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I don't disagree with anything you just said.
Toronto St. Paul's. I mean, the Liberals should win this, and even if you look at the swing, the provincial swing we saw in Ontario, still the Liberals should win this. Demographically, it's their electorate, but they could also sit this one out, which opens the door. If Trudeau loses a 416 seat, which has never happened since Trudeau was Prime Minister. How could they possibly think it's a good idea to keep him? But it's not necessarily a good rationale. We've discussed this before. Maybe they're not thinking rationally, but maybe many Liberal MPs will start sending out resumes to PR and GR firms after this loss, because it would be a really bad sign of things to come. And for Elmwood Transcona, I'm being told that the Conservatives will push hard on this one. They see the NDP as very vulnerable, considering the NDP is in the Casa with the Liberals. The Liberals are not competitive in Elmwood Transcona. No. If the NDP loses this, I think the same questions will be asked about Jack Measing. Okay, your turn. What do you think?
Yeah, I think these results could end up being catalysts for other things happening. If the Liberals lose in Toronto St. Paul's, that is going to be such a stinging defeat if it happened, that it is kind of hard to imagine Trudeau not taking that opportunity to saying that he's done. Because if you lose that seat, a seat that they won in 2011, what seat can't you lose?
Exactly.
And it would be very hard for him to I can't even imagine it really how he would explain that kind of defeat and maintain his position. So it feels like that could be the kind of result that would cause other things to happen. There's been, I think Chantal Hébert said recently that, by Canada Day, more or less, Trudeau will have to make up his mind.
Yeah,
June 24th is a week before Canada Day,
That's
so
right.
Could be a moment that concentrates minds. In LaSalle Aimard Verdun, it's just hard to see another party being able to win, like you said, like to gather all of that support to be able to beat the Liberals. So it seems far less likely that they would lose that, even if their support there was a bit lower than it was in Toronto St. Paul's. If they lost that, then I think that's also curtains.
But who would they lose it to? I'm sorry for the NDP, but the Bloc is not going to win LaSalle Aimard Verdun.
Yeah.
And the NDP, I know they have a city councillor, Craig Sauvé, is running there, but that's so many votes to get. It
just seems unlikely.
Yeah.
In Elmwood Transcona, that again, like you said, it could raise some serious questions. Now, if we end up with the Liberals holding LaSalle Aimard with a decent score, they hold off the Conservatives, maybe the margin shrinks to like 10 points, and the NDP holds off the Conservatives on with Transcona. I wonder if that will change any kind of conversation, right? If the Conservatives close the gap in Toronto St. Paul's, but they don't win it,
Yeah.
Does that give the Liberals a bit of a break, a little bit of a reprieve in the questions? I don't know. It still shouldn't be a seat that they get close to losing.
Exactly.
But I think these will be pretty important by-elections. We'll do live streams for all of them because I think they're going to be pretty important, assuming we're around. If they call La Salle et Mar Verdun when one of us is on vacation, well, that's we'll send a note to the PMO so that they don't do that to us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm on it.
Okay, let's move to the questions for our Patreon members. For everybody else, we're going to get to the quiz. All right, why don't we get to the quiz?
Okay, so the quiz is simple this week, my friend. I went through elections, federal elections of my lifetime in the 20th century. So 1979 to 2000, which is with 7 general elections. I will ask you, how many provinces were won by a party with more than 50% of the vote? We're excluding territories here because I didn't factor them.
Okay.
And you have to go through those provinces with the party that won over 50% of the vote. When you get them all, I will tell you, you get 1 point per right answer, and you have 1 strike available per election. If you're wrong twice, you're done for that election. And I won't tell you the number of points available, but I have written it down here because it would be a clue. So I have also a model for gold, silver, and bronze.
Okay.
So,
all right.
1979 election, the PCs of Joe Clark win against Pierre Trudeau. How many provinces did the Liberal... In how many provinces did the Liberals win more than 50% of the vote? How many did the PCs? And how many did the NDP? And so.
This is not easy.
This is not easy, and I'm listening to you. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't think the NDP did, so I don't think that's 0 for them.
That is correct.
The Liberals still dominated in Quebec, so they would have had 1 being Quebec that they got over 50% of the vote.
Correct, you got 1 point.
No one's done it in BC, so BC is not going to be one of them. The Conservatives, Joe Clark was obviously from Alberta. I think they would have got over 50% in Alberta.
So is that an answer?
Yes.
Yes, the PCs did get over 50% in Alberta in 1979, yes.
Now, the rest of it...
Again, I would, if you had them all, I would tell you.
Okay. The rest of it, I don't know. The PCs could have gotten more of the 50% in Saskatchewan, Manitoba. The NDP would have still had some strength there at the time. And then in Atlantic Canada, I think that the Liberals would have probably got over 50% of the vote in some of them. Okay, so I'm going to say that the Liberals got 50% of the vote in Newfoundland.
That is your first strike.
Oh, no. Okay. And I'm going to say that the PCs got 50% in Saskatchewan.
That is your second strike. You're done. But you have 2 points out of 3, and it was a hard one.
Okay.
The PCs had 50% of the vote in PEI.
Oh, PEI.
So
PEI is going to be the one that screws me over every time.
Okay, so 2 points. Pretty good out of 3. 1980, the return of Pierre-Elliott Trudeau, a majority. How many provinces and by which party had over 50% of the vote? I'm listening.
Again, I don't think the NDP got over 50% any of them.
Correct.
The Liberals, again, dominated in Quebec. So they got 50% of the vote in Quebec.
Correct. 1 point.
The Liberals had they had 2 seats, I think, or maybe even 0 seats west of Ontario. So they wouldn't have done well there. So I'm going to say the PCs got 50% of the vote in Alberta.
That is correct. You got 2 points.
If they didn't do it in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, I don't know if they would have increased their vote. So I'm going to say that they didn't. I'm not going to say the PCs won PI. I'll say the Liberals got 50% Newfoundland and Labrador.
First strike.
Oh, no. Also, it was just Newfoundland at the time. And, oh boy. The Liberals did really well in Ontario. So did they get 50% in Ontario?
That's a second strike.
Oh,
but
no.
2 points out of 3 because the Liberals had 50% of the vote in New Brunswick in that election. And that's it. So you had 4 points out of 6 available points to you. That's pretty good. Okay. We move to
1984.
1984.
So the PCs got 50% of the vote, I think, across the country, didn't they, in that election?
50.02. Yes.
All right. So they got it in most places, or at least, so they definitely got it in Quebec.
Quebec is one. You got a point.
I'm trying to think, where did they not get it? I can visualize the map. It was all blue.
It was all blue.
Of provinces. So
Yep.
I'm going to say, obviously, they got it in Alberta.
They did in Alberta, so that's 2
I'm
points.
going to say Manitoba.
Nope, first strike.
Oh.
Careful here. Careful here. There are more.
Okay. 50% in PI.
Yes, that's at 3 points.
50% in New Brunswick.
Yes, that's 4 points.
50% in Ontario.
No.
Ah.
So second strike. It was Alberta, Quebec, and the 4 Atlantic provinces. So you got 4 points out of 6. You're up to 8.
Okay.
Okay. We move to 1988, the second Mulroney victory. A great majority, but a reduced majority compared to the blowout that was 1984. Go ahead.
PC's got 50% in Quebec.
That is correct. 1 point.
I'm going to say they also got it in Alberta.
And that is all. So you have 2 points for that election. That is it. They didn't,
right.
And the Liberals had none, obviously. So
Yeah.
okay,
1993.
you're up to 10 points. That so far you're doing really well. Okay, 1993. Go ahead.
The Bloc Québécois did not get 50% in Quebec, so nobody got 50%
That
in
is
Quebec.
correct.
The Liberals did get 50% in Ontario.
That is correct. 1 point.
I think Reform got 50% in Alberta.
That is correct. 2 points.
They wouldn't have gotten in BC. No one would have. Saskatchewan, actually, I don't think either, because I think the Liberals did pretty well in Saskatchewan. Manitoba, probably not. So we're out east. They won. The PCs won a seat in New Brunswick, so maybe they didn't get 50%, the Liberals. So I'm going to say 50% Nova Scotia.
For the Liberals,
Yeah.
that is correct. 3 points.
50% in PI.
That is correct. You're up to how many euros now? You're up to
4.
4.
50% in Newfoundland.
That is correct. 5.
Did they get in New Brunswick? I'm going to say no. But I got to have one more. Okay, so I got Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I said Quebec didn't, and New Brunswick. 50% for Reform in Saskatchewan.
Nope. First strike.
50% for the Liberals in New Brunswick.
That is correct, and you get them all. That's 6.
Okay.
So you have 6 points. Okay. So far you're at 16 points. For me, that was the threshold for bronze. So
Yay.
You're there, and you have 2 elections left. 1997. Jean Chrétien wins in a majority. Different election, last election of the Reform, and second last election for the PCs.
So no one got it in BC. So I remember looking into the last time anybody got over 50% BC, so none in BC. Reform would have got it in Alberta.
And yes, and that's the only one.
Okay.
So you got it. It was a good idea to go from west to east. And so you're at 17 points. You could get gold if you run the table here.
Okay.
Okay.
2000 election.
2000 election. I'm listening. But you have to run the table.
Okay. Once again, none in BC. Canadian Alliance would have got 50% in Alberta.
That is correct.
Okay.
You need the last one to win gold.
There's only one more?
No, but you need the last ones. You need to run the table.
Okay.
So.
Saskatchewan. They got it. I can't imagine anybody else. So Canadian Alliance 50% in Saskatchewan.
Nope. First strike.
Oh.
Careful here. Careful here. You have the silver locked up, but you have to run the table to win gold.
Did the Liberals get 50% in Ontario in that election? I feel like they won almost everything in Ontario in that election. I think it's easier to say, well, no, Atlantic Canada lost support in 97. Did they get it back in 2000? I'm going to say Liberals 50% Ontario.
And you are correct, and that is the last one. So you win gold with 19 points. That was my threshold, 19 out of 23. Wow, pretty good.
But that's an interesting quiz. That's a different format. We've never done that one before.
I did not know that Jean Chrétien had over 50% in 2000, his third election. Had 50% of the vote, but not in the Atlantic provinces. And you may have noticed in all 7 elections, Alberta's everywhere.
Yeah.
Alberta is at every one of them. The Conservative Party get over 50%. I mean, when was the last time it has not happened? I mean, 2015, did the Conservatives get over 50%? Yeah, they must have,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. I think it wasn't that far before, I don't think, because the West didn't vote for the Conservatives until Diefenbaker, really, in very good numbers.
Yeah, well, that's a long time ago.
It was 58 election, but
Alberta.
Yeah, it's been pretty solid. But the Social Credit used to get a lot of the vote. But once Social Credit fell apart in 1979, I guess it opened up the path for the PCs. But anyway, that was interesting. And I won gold.
Wow.
Which
you
is
won
the most
gold.
important thing.
My thresholds, it was 23 points in total. My thresholds were 19, 18, and 17. But I didn't want to tell you the total because you could have played.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Very smart. Well thought out. Congratulations, Philippe, on a good design for a quiz. How about the number of the week? I'm going to go first.
Go ahead.
32%. So this was the number of Liberal voters in the Léger poll who said Trudeau is staying on as PM because he likes the job and doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Now, 47% of the general population said that was the reason that Trudeau was sticking around. I saw that was the headline in the Post story about it. For me, people are cynical about politicians. I'm not surprised that a lot of people think a politician is staying in there for their own good. But I thought that the fact that a third of current Liberal supporters, not like people who used to vote for the Liberal, people who are currently backing the party, think that Trudeau is staying on primarily because he doesn't want to leave and he likes the job. That does not suggest to me that there's a lot of Liberals that are happy that Trudeau is staying on as leader. It goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, my number of the week is the same poll and the same question. So Trudeau's motivation to continue as Prime Minister. It was a short list of answers that respondents had to choose from. He likes being Prime Minister, doesn't want to leave. That's number one. Number two, he has more policies he wants to implement. Number three, he doesn't feel there are any suitable replacements for him as leader of the Liberal Party. And the last one is he personally wants to face off against Pierre Poilievre. He doesn't have any suitable replacements. A quarter of Liberal voters believe that. A quarter of Liberal voters see Trudeau as still the best ones because they think Trudeau knows that nobody else can take the reins and take this party to victory. So I thought that was interesting. But I would have added more options in there. But he likes being Prime Minister and doesn't want to leave. I would like to be Prime Minister. I wouldn't want to leave. Although I wouldn't want the responsibilities, but the title is nice, right?
Sure.
So anyway, I thought it was interesting.
It would only be natural. We're all human after all. All right, well, that'll be it for this episode of The Numbers. As always, if you want to support the work that we're doing, get access to the bonus episodes, the extended mailbag, ask us the questions, take part in the Discord, which is still a lot of fun. You can join us at thenumberspod.ca for less than $5 a month, and we would appreciate your support. And Philippe, I appreciate you joining me every week, and it's always a highlight of the week, and today was no different. So I hope you have a great weekend. Looking like it's going to be a really nice one. And we'll talk in 7 days.
Talk to you soon, my friend. Merci beaucoup, everybody. Thank you for your support. We greatly appreciate it. Have a great week.